didn't hear anything, we will try to get back to questions as much as possible, but we will also send them the recording to you guys afterwards, and there will be a Q&A at the end of the webinar. And finally, just in terms of engagement, so I've had a few questions from the attendees. You won't be able to put your mics on during this webinar, or be able to see other attendees who are here. But if you do want to engage with us, we have a Q&A box on what should be on your right side of the screen. So any questions, just drop them in there and we'll try to get back to you, as well as a chat box where you can engage with us. And then if you look just above your chat box, there should be a bit of a speaker icon. Please use that to engage with us when we ask kind of poll questions. So yes, no, too fast, too slow, applause, laughter, you've got there as well. So that's from me. Again, in terms of any, I think there's a few people starting to log on. If you do have any colleagues that are, just kind of drop me a note and I'll try to help them. And if you have any technical issues as well, we'll try to assist you via the chat box. But yeah, I'll hand over to Georgios now. Should be able to pass it over to you.
Yep.
Yep, I can see your screen.
Great. Let me just give me 1 second. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just gonna turn on the camera for now so that you can actually see me, and then we'll be switching it off for bandwidth purposes, just to make certain that everybody can follow.
George, I can't see your screen anymore. I'm not sure if you've unshared that intentionally.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you, Shanna and everybody, for organizing this seminar. As Shanna has mentioned, this is entitled as the Transition to Distance Learning, English Language Teaching for Young Adults. So this is the outline for our session today. So we'll talk about distance learning in the 21st century, how distance learning can make an impact for both educators and learners, English language teaching through online tools, and we will have a Q&A session towards the end. Primarily, my name is Georgios. I'm from Greece. I currently reside in Saudi Arabia, where I've been working for the last 9 years at Yamamah University. I've been teaching, as Afshana said, English for 7 years at the Internet Language Centers there. And I've also direct the Teaching Learning Development Center, as well as work for the executive education. So let's have a small poll. Let's, which country are you connecting from? Can you just type in the chat box, please? Kuwait, Turkey, Syria, Hungary, wow, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Armenia, very good, UK, Turkey, Qatar, great, great, great. So this is, I suppose, Malaysia. Nice, very good. So we have audience from a lot of countries. So we might have more opinions and more interesting responses. All right, so let's get started with distance learning. So we will be using this term in this webinar about distance learning, and a dictionary definition is the one that is shown here. that it's a way of studying in which you do not need to attend a school, a college, or university, but you study where you live, usually being taught or given work to do over the internet. We will see how that term changes and how this term is being used nowadays. Primarily, when did distance learning start? It goes way back in the 1700s. It was learning by correspondence. So, excuse me, the first documented example that we have was in 1728 at the Boston Gazette, where Caleb Phillips would teach shorthand to students by exchanging letters. And of course, as you can imagine, it has changed a lot since then, and many more different subjects are being taught. For our field, especially for the ELT science, I suppose, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s were when all this started to be used extensively. Technology played a vital role. If you remember tape recorders, and many of us that are, I suppose, 30 plus, do remember the tape recorders and cassettes. The audiolingual approach, audiolingual method, and autonomous learning were popular at that time. So students could buy methods from the bookstores, even from the kiosk, I suppose, in some countries, and they could learn language on their own or correspond with an instructor that they would send them assignments or they would send them all sorts of activities, and then they would go back. Of course, needless to say, of all the endless repetition that you would have from all those methods, that you would listen to a sentence and then, go and repeat it as a little parrot. So those were those times. Now, if this has changed in our years, it absolutely has. It has changed tremendously. At the beginning, we had conventional learning material that would be used in classes, worksheets, books, any type of material you can use in a class, was digitized by technology. So exactly what was being done in a class environment, or where you would have human interaction, where you would have students doing pair work, group work, different dynamics. This was only digitized and was made available to teachers and students in a digital format. So that material primarily was used as guidance for students with instructor support in a synchronous or in an asynchronous way. So just to make certain that everybody is aware of synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous means when there is interaction. It doesn't have to be live, but there is interaction between the two parties. And asynchronously is when there is not so much interaction, which was the case at the beginning of distance education. And that was the example. I have another question for all of us. Have you all been asked to teach on a distance learning platform lately? Yes or no? I haven't seen a no, yes. I haven't seen a no yet. So everybody has, I suppose. Great. All right, so that gives us the right audience, I suppose. Now, the traditional classroom that we used to be in, some of us a few weeks ago or a few months ago, I think I have been teaching online for the last month, and this is what our classroom used to look like. I don't know if we still have blackboards or whiteboards or interactive boards, but there was a lot of interaction. We were in a face-to-face environment, and that was what we were used to. Now we've been on this, where students can join the classes from the ease of their home, or we may think that they're there and they just log in and we don't know if they're actually there. Now, this comes from a question that we had on a session on Monday. So what is the difference between distance learning and online learning? So distance learning is more in-person. There's no in-person interaction, sorry. So it's distance learning as it was used before. And online learning consists of more in-person interaction. So, and as I said before, it can be live or it can be in an offline mode, but there is interaction between the two parties. So when I'm talking about distance learning nowadays, I will be referring more to the synchronous and then not the asynchronous version of it. My last question, I promise. Have you taught online before? All right. So I see the majority of the group saying no. There are some yeses. Yeah. So very good. I tricked you. This is the last one. Do you think that online teaching is the same with face-to-face? Some long no's. Yeah. No. Yes. Couple of yeses. No way. Not much. In some ways and not in others. So I would like to go through now to what we're experiencing right now, because what we're really experiencing right now is not either online or distance learning or any kind of practice or example that we had before. So there has been some, terminology that is being used, and the terminology that's being used currently right now is emergency remote instruction is what we're currently faced with. This means that educators around the world were asked to transfer their face-to-face classes on an online environment almost instantly. In some institutions, it happened in one day. In some others, like a few days, a couple of weeks. So you understand that this is an emergency remote instruction. What does that tell us about this example? What it really tells us is that we haven't faced a situation before, and there are certain examples we can take from conventional teaching or face-to-face teaching, I would say, and some others from the online education, distance education or online education, and it's all a mix. So you have students that have, they have joined a university, they have joined a language school, they have joined a tutoring session that they had decided there's going to be face-to-face, and now suddenly it has become distance education, online education, pretty much emergency remote instruction. This is at the bottom of the screen. You can see this is a worksheet from the quality management, from a quality magazine for educators. I will share the link towards this. Is just one part of it. It has lots of ideas of what should instructors do, what are the actions that the instructors can take in order for the transition from face-to-face to be much more smoother rather than, so abrupt. So as I said, the resource is available, and I will be sharing that on the resources page towards the end of this presentation. So how feasible is distance learning? It is feasible. It can be achieved, but of course it needs a lot of work. It needs training, resilience, time from multiple parties. And when we're talking about parties, when we're talking about stakeholders in education, it has to be primarily the students, the educators, even parents, because it's very, very important that everybody is involved. If not everybody is involved, then rush decisions are made, or you may have decisions that are not acceptable by different parties. Now let's take a look at the face-to-face curricula. As we said, the majority of you agreed that face-to-face and online education or their curricula are not the same. So let's go through the face-to-face curricula. Face-to-face curricula are designed for classroom use, where human interaction plays a significant role, and you will have to think about that a lot for the online education. The instructors, they play a major role to facilitate learning and support students in a face-to-face instruction. Students have to physically attend class and participate, be part of the class, and this is important for participation in the online version. There's interaction among students and the instructor in the physical space. And now let's see the difference between the online. In the online curricula, these are designed for distance learning use, where electronic implementation interaction play a significant role, which means how these tools are being used, how the interaction works, how the motivation of the learners work are different. The instructor is the facilitator, so the learning is supported virtually with the tools available. And when we talk about tools, it differs from a platform to another. So other platforms may have, breakout rooms. You may have polls. You may have, emotions. You may have, things that students can use, like raising your hand if somebody wants to say something, or if they have technical problems, and so on and so forth. Students have to virtually attend the class and participate via their electronic devices, and we will see how important are devices a little bit later. There's interaction among students, and the instructor is in a virtual environment in the main room or breakout rooms. So the interaction only happens over there. The major differences. Now, the major differences are from online to face-to-face education, that the curricula serve the same purpose. They're different in the structure, but they serve the same purpose. So you can have the same curriculum for a face-to-face class. Let's say if you're teaching a B1 student, B1.1 student or a class, then that would be transferred in an online version. So you would actually expect the same learning outcomes. But now how this is done and how this is implemented, how this is changed, is a different story. The instructor has the same role. So it doesn't change how the instructor facilitates the session, but the means are different. So technology plays a very, very important role. Students and instructors can attend from the ease of their home. So we don't have the commuting, we don't have the usual excuses that students come up with that they're late. Although, from my experience, even when it's online education, students do find a way to find excuses. And students and instructors have to use technology. Now, all of us have incorporated technology in one way or another. Even when you use your laptop, you're incorporating technology, even a simple projector where you project your slides, or if you have interactive whiteboards or whatsoever. But in online education, technology is mandatory, so we must use it. It's not a luxury that we say, oh, well, I'll incorporate technology. This is something that I like to do just to be current and to help and support my students. And of course, the interaction differs. Now, this is something that I added since the previous one, the previous webinar that we had, because as you may understand, publications are coming out one day after, very, very quickly. So this is something that I wanted to go through, and this is an independent publication that talks about pedagogy in an unfolding pandemic. And I'm just going to go through the main points. You can find the resource at the end of my resources page. So primarily and quickly, this is an unprecedented, uncharted territory, but it will spark educational innovation. Lots of innovations will happen because of this change. Collaboration is required amongst many parties, and we have talked about that before: students, learners, parents, the governments, everybody. This is actually a real test. If you can think of that, we always have a plan B. We're always saying, we're doing risk analysis and all of those, means that we have if anything happens. This is real. It happens, so we will be ready if, God forbid, happens again in the future. Flexibility is needed for distance education and realization that learning can happen. So you might see those institutions, governments, entities that say, distance learning, online education is not as valid as face-to-face. So maybe this is the time when they will be convinced that online education and distance education is actually working. Of course, educators need to be supported with proper resources, and it's not just, we should be working and we should have the tools that are available for us. Course design is different, of course. As I said before, the curricula may serve the same purposes, but they are different in the design. Continuous discussion among stakeholders. Everybody should be involved and they should have an opinion about what is happening and how those changes are implemented. Assessment is to be rethought, and we're going to see a few examples further down. How can this be achieved? PD for educators who are unfamiliar with those practices, because as you may understand, educators around the world are not of same knowledge of technology incorporation or distance learning, online learning and platforms and all of those. So PD is mandatory for a lot of colleagues of ours. Communications need to be clear and coherent from a reliable source. I will stress that down further, but you must make certain that you get your communications from reliable sources, you get your information from reliable sources, professional associations, publishing houses, or anything that is trusted. And the most important that I think for me from this publication is that teachers should make educated decisions for the best of their students. So teachers should be empowered and they should be given the decision-making power to make those decisions that are best for the students, because teachers do know what is best for their students and they can adapt and adopt new methods or practices that are proper for their learning of their students. Here you can see, this is from this publication again, so you can see some sample authentic assessments on the left side, and then how those can be implemented with web-based tools or applications. I'm not going to go through them. You can take a look at them later, and those are going to be available after this session. You can also see some sample formative assessments and how those can be transferred on a web-based, using web-based tools. Now, moving along to the impact for educators and learners. So the impact of distance learning or online educators, it influences both, of course, the educators and the learners. The impact on educators may be on a variety of challenges, which can be technological, instructional, behavioral, and others in order to implement online curriculum. We must also though think, and we'll be talking about it in a few minutes, about the challenges that students have. And this is very, very important to have in mind when we're designing, implementing, or actually providing the classes to students. Educators might find it challenging to adapt to distance learning practices. We have seen, and in my experience and by looking in different mainstream programs for bachelor's and master's courses, they usually have a technology incorporation in their classes, but they're not specifically for distance learning or online learning. I will give you an example. When I graduated from my master's in 2007, I had to take a CALL class, a computer-assisted language learning class, and that was a mandatory class for me. That was my first and only exposure to computer-assisted language learning. Of course, coming from my bachelor's, which was in computer science, it was not something new, but I could see my fellow classmates struggling and seeing, how does this technology work? What is this? What is that? So I had to take that as a mandatory course. Another, and it actually really, really helped me when, making a decision to further to a PhD about technology enhanced learning. It was much more easier for me to think that, it's not going to be something different. So what I'm saying is that it's not something that is mandatory for degrees, but you must make your own way to see how this principle works. So what I want to caution you, though, that there's a plethora of programs out there, certificates, degrees, online education, especially now, it's booming, it's everywhere. But you must make certain that you make the right choice. So what I always when colleagues or friends ask me, which program should I take? What is the best one? What do you recommend? I always tell them, look at what do they offer, look what are your needs, and then do SWOT analysis, or just compare to what are your needs and what is being offered. Because we must make certain that at this time, where online education is booming, that there's always a chance of scams or different kinds of companies just popping up and offering different online education certificates that may not be valuable, or they just would like to take your money. Technology, of course, plays a vital role in the implementation of learning outcomes. But what happens when technology fails? What happens when the internet fails? I keep on saying that we have a plan B. So if we were in a class, of course, we would have a different kind of activity, something that would work. In an online environment, I would say that you always need to be able to email your students. If you're in a synchronous environment, you always need to be asynchronous at the same time, which means if the internet breaks or if the connection is bad, you need to be able to contact your students. You may need to do the class later or another day, but be in touch with your students and make certain that they know that you're reaching out. If the internet goes down, there's not so much we can do because it's online education, but we can at least try or recap on the next available time. Another important aspect is burnout, because as I said, there's a lot of webinars, there's a lot of online education right now that they focus on online education. So you have to make certain that you pick and choose the ones that are important to you, the ones that are relevant to you. In-house education, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, you have to make certain that they're live recordings, they're live sessions, they're recorded sessions, so that people can have access to them, because maybe some people need more time or they're not available at that time. This is what we do in our institution. The needs for the educators, are materials they can use right away, complete solutions that can be tailored for the individual needs of the learners, and continuous support from the team providing the solution. This is something we will be discussing towards the end of this session. Now, for professional development, how does professional development happen at this time? So professional learning communities helping educators around the world. There are webinars offered by teacher experts. So use those webinars for your, just to become expert on a specific topic or to get an idea. In-house training where possible, or social media provides tips, advice, examples, but be careful, as I said, of scams. Now, what's the impact of distance learning to students? Primarily, you have to remember that students were not part of this. So students are, when they entered the university in January, February, when they entered their language classes, they were supposed to be on a face-to-face environment. Now students are shocked because they, I would say, violently went from one environment to the other. Most of them may not have experienced online education or distance learning before. And that is something that we need to take into consideration. So students are shocked. So you have to remember that, and students may not know. It's a little bit different story for us as educators because, the majority of us, and I mean, I don't have the exact data, but I think that a lot of educators have taken an online course before they've watched a webinar. So it might not be so different for us. We need to help them, support them, and train them. And how they need to use distance learning tools. Some misconceptions about our students. We tend to think that all our students are tech savvy, students can achieve anything we assign, and students will do okay because they're born in an era where technology was booming. Well, that's a little bit wrong. I'll give you an example in a second. I did a research in in a university here, and in 2017, and it showed that students can use their phones for basic purposes like taking pictures, send messages, and social media, of course. So we all know Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, all of these applications. They can be overwhelmed by technology for learning because they have not associated so much technology with learning. They have associated more technology with spending their free time or doing something that they like. They may not have the proper equipment and software to participate in class. You will be amazed to see how many students just have a phone or have a tablet or have a laptop, but they've never actually used it, especially when it comes to software. Again, I was surprised when I found out that majority of my students didn't have Word on their laptops or their tablets. So they were asking me, can we do it through our phones? An interesting, I would say, a creative solution that one of my students found was that he took a picture of the Word file and then he wrote the answers on top, and then he sent me a screenshot on my email. I thought that was actually very, very creative. Another interesting thing is that they may not be familiar to type on a keyboard because they've been using their phones a lot and they have not been actually using a physical keyboard. Some fun facts: when students were asked to join distance learning platforms, initial problems, they could not log into the site. They could not turn on or turn off their camera. So you would see all those different angles of their cars, of their houses, or whatsoever. The same goes with the microphone. So what does that tell us? If they cannot do those very, very simple things, it means that they're not acquainted with technology. Although we think they're tech geeks or freaks, they're not. They only know specific, very, very, very specific elements of technology that it's done for their, for fun. So students will ask for help. So this is something that we need to do. So what can you do to be supported as an instructor and be able to support your students? There are several things that we can help and support you. So you need to find a solution that will be offering a variety of options, like synchronous and asynchronous mode. So you can be online or offline on the learning experience. The educator support. So you need to be supported by the team that is providing the solution, and of course there needs to be student support as well. So let us see what can we do through ELT through online tools. So as there is a plethora of training out there on the internet, there's also a plethora of tools that are there to support you. Can they all help you? They can, but you need to again be very, very cautious. So you need to find tools that can help you reflect the learning objectives that you have on your syllabi, on your courses. They need to be culturally adapted to your region. You know that the internet is very, very vast. It has endless resources. So that makes us, we need to be very, very careful on how we select the resources and the online tools that we provide with our students. And can it be in a protective environment? Can it be in a control environment, or do we just give them the whole internet? And again, they need to be able to work synchronously and asynchronously. So some of the, what do you need to be careful with and be working through the online tools? We're talking about academic content because we're preparing our students for academia. We're working with prior knowledge, scaffolding instruction, information that is organized, interaction, which is very, very important, and cultivating critical thinking. Critical thinking comes in all aspects, I believe. It does need to come from a very, very young age, and especially in school when teaching language, etc. So one of the tools that you can use that is very well supported is Connect. It's the online platform from McGraw Hill. And New Interactions, a product that is being launched and it has its roots in the Middle East, is being offered on that platform. So as you can see, Connect has millions of paid interactions as well as answered billions of questions since 2009. This would be a typical Connect section that you have. So on the right side, you can see the book, the ebook version, and I will be talking a little bit about it later. What does the ebook mean? So you have different books for reading and writing and different ones for listening and speaking. And on the left side of the screen, you can see question banks where you can create assessments from questions that have already been prepared by the academic staff. Learn, Smart, and Achieve, Power of Process, blog assignments, file attachment assignments, and web activity. Again, you can give that on a specific website. This is a typical screen again, a typical section that you can see, and on the left side, you can see some assignments that I created, reviews for my students. Here you can see the student view. So how would the student view look? How does the student version of the book look? So you can see the assignments that they have. On the far left, you can see their profile, their calendar, assignments that they have to do, and of course their ebooks. Connect offers a range of powerful tools. So I'm just going to talk briefly about those four in a second. So Read Anywhere is something that is connected with asynchronous and asynchronous that I talked to you about before. So pretty much you can download the book or chapter of a book, and you can have it at the tip of your fingers. So I really like that graph that says goodbye to heavy books and backpacks. And these are some screenshots that I personally took from my phone. So this is how it looks like. So you can see the broad variety of, you have listening, you have reading, you can check your answers. Everything happens in the synchronous mode. But it's live on you don't have to be connected to the internet to do it. You just have to be connected when you download. Learn, Smart, and Achieve is personalized learning. So it's actually an adaptive study plan that you can use with your students. And we have all had, classes with, different capacities of students, mixed ability classes, which you can cope with. So here you can give them extra material. You choose what kind of learning would you like them, or what kind of support would you like them to have, like in reading, in writing, syntax, vocabulary. You decide the time, you decide the content, the times, etc. The power of process is a unique feature which gives them, it's the critical thinking that we were talking about before. So here, yet again, you can give them the option of checking, them providing a document to be working with. You design your own document, or you choose from this variety. So it's divided with different CFR levels, word counts, themes, etc., etc. This is a sample. Then yet again, you can do before reading, during reading, and post-reading. What kind of strategies would you like them to work on, and what do they need to do? 13 reports are available from your Connect if you use it as a tool. Lots of information there, and who doesn't want a place where everything is stored and we can just pull reports out? Performance, progress by topic, metacognitive skills if you use all the tools available, how much time they spend on the platform, and very, very important, students at risk, depending on their achievement, and how can we help and support them. So this is the range of new interactions from 1 to 4 and beginner. And here you can see some of the functions that are that are being used.
I think we need to pause for a moment and let our audience know that you shifted from the platform talk that is Connect from McGraw Hill to our new academic English program recently launched called New Interactions.
Yeah, that's correct. And then you can see the ebook here and different functions of it. So you can have, in the reading part, you can have interactive answers. as well as hints that are available on the ebook platform. Lots of different tools that you can use.
What we're seeing is the ebook part of the program. It offers interaction and personalization, as we can see. The students are able to interact with the content. No matter what device they're on, they can access it from anywhere. Read Anywhere app that Georgios mentioned earlier allows for offline access as well. So students can access the content from any device they are on, and it doesn't need internet. It supports offline access with all the interactivity supported as well. Yes, please.
I don't know, Nasir, this is a powerful tool. I think that in your interactions has a search button where you can type a word and it will give you all the, wherever this word is found in the ebook, thing which is very, very useful if you're looking for a term or if you're looking for a word. All of these tools that you see are personalized. So you can personalize even how small or large the font you want to be from the view.
Instant feedback is available, as we can see, when the student is interacting and doing activities. We're going to send a link when we will be communicating with our attendees along with the recording. And I also posted the link in the chat box. You can visit the page and you can have a look at the program, and you can also request demo access from the same page.
Yep. So I'm going to give my final takeaways, and then we'll move on to the question part. So get educated for distance learning or online learning. Choose a solution that caters for both you and your students. Don't be afraid to ask if you have questions. Don't forget to give yourselves and students time and resilience, because in the end of the day, that's what teaching is all about. Thank you. So now we can move on to the questions. Afsana or Nasir?
Yep, I've got a few. So I think somebody just wants to know the name of the ebook and the site app. Just wonder if you could repeat that again.
Yeah, this is Connect, and they can get access, demo access. They can ask their representative, or Nasir, can they contact? Who can they contact? I'm not.
So they'll get a follow-up email which they can contact me with, and I'll forward them on to the relevant rep.
Yes, and the ebook example was of our new academic English program called New Interactions. So that's the ebook, and Read Anywhere app comes with the program as an option for learners and teachers to access the material from any device.
Okay, so we've got one that's asking, I teach EFL basic writing. Anything for this group?
The reading and writing book would be useful for that, depending on the level, of course, that they're teaching.
And then we have, can instructors upload their own content to Connect?
Yeah, in a variety of ways, I think. They can upload documents, they can upload assignments, they can go to provide web links. They can even, excuse me, they can even record their sessions. I mean, they can even record their, it depends if it's a lecture or if it's like a class, they can have those sessions stored in, on Connect.
And then we've got another one that's asking, does Connect have a method to track authenticity of student work?
Yes,
I didn't hear that. Yeah.
It has the analytics and reporting available to track students' work. And then there is another question. So one of our colleagues is asking about the difference between Connect and Blackboard. Well, Blackboard is an LMS, and Connect is a course management platform from McGraw Hill, and it integrates with Blackboard. It works in sync with Blackboard, so it works with Blackboard.
It does actually work with most online platforms, LMS, Moodle. So depending on what your platform you're using in your institution, it can be incorporated.
Okay, and then we've got one asking, can you imagine that distance learning would be a unique mode of teaching one day?
We never know what tomorrow will bring, but I think what I can surely say is that the what we had before, meaning that distance learning or online learning was something that was kind of afar, something that people used from, in distant places or places that, didn't have a lot of educational institutions on a face-to-face, basis. Now I think that this is going to be reevaluated. And I think we're going to be seeing more online education being offered. And I think online education is going to be appreciated more in the future, in the near future.
Okay, and then on the back of that, we've got someone who's asking, how do you assess the quality of your distance teaching, and have you noticed any dramatic changes in the learning outcomes?
I think when it comes to me, I haven't seen dramatic changes. I've tried to make my classes as interactive as possible. It's not very easy to do, but I haven't seen any dramatic changes in the students. But yet again, you have to remember that this is a unique situation where, for example, for me, I had those students for almost 2.5 months on a face-to-face basis, and then we transitioned online. So I have met them. I know their individual needs. I know how they respond, how they interact, what are their needs. If I didn't, there were only distance learning students, maybe it would have been different. I'm not going to say more difficult, but I'm going to say that it would have been different.
Okay, and then we've got another one that's just asking. So someone has said, I work at a university prep school of 150 plus instructors and over 3,500 students who are at 6 different levels. How do you think we can assess their progress? We have been given quizzes and midterms for the pandemic. Yeah,
this is an issue that you need to be aware of. As I said before, this is a new process not only for the majority of teachers, but for, I would say, most of the students. So you have to be a little careful and cautious, like not to overdo it, not to overassess students. And you may actually, you have to give them time and you have to be patient. Now, we don't have the luxury of time, especially when exam dates or, different types of assessments are required by governments or ministries of education. So we have to be a little bit resilient. We have to be flexible. We cannot just, whatever we did back in class, on face-to-face basis, I mean, like we have to do exactly. So if you had, 2 midterms and a final and 2 quizzes, maybe this needs to be less, as it's more difficult. And going back to another comment another colleague made in this call is that plagiarism might go up. Yes, plagiarism will go up, but you have to make certain that you assess your students fairly. So I give them the tools that I'm going to use when I'm assessing their papers, for example. I go through the rubric, and I know that some students will plagiarize, but we have to educate them. So that's, I think, the basis of this whole discussion. Educate yourselves, but also educate the students. Students don't know, and students for sure would try to find the easiest solution.
Thank you. And then we've got someone that's asking if you have an online conferencing tool that you use, or if you recommend one to minimize the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Again, sorry, Sana, didn't catch it.
So someone's asking if you recommend any online conferencing apps just to help them kind of teaching students and minimizing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I would say you just go through that publication that I gave. I will give in the resources. I mean, that gives you a lot of ideas and lots of help and support for that.
And in addition to that, they can also visit McGraw Hill's website. We are providing dedicated pages to support teachers and learners in the COVID scenario. So it will be useful.
Thank you, Mr. And then we've got someone's asking the K12 New Nutrition series that you have. Is it for all grades of schools? Was it for some?
It's for young adults. It's an academic English program. It's not primarily targeting school students. You can have a look at it and see if it fits. It does have 5 levels. It starts from beginner and it goes to post-intermediate level.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Would you like to read the, Georgios?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this one says, can we get these apps from the website?
Which apps? The Connect?
I think we need to read anywhere app.
Yeah, of course. They can download them from either the App Store or if they have an Android, they're available. And they log in with the same credentials that they log in on Connect. So primarily they need to have like a Connect account.
Right. Do students engage more when their cameras are on? Is there any research on this?
I haven't read any research about it, but what I can see from my 3 classes that I teach online and from the discussions I had with colleagues is that students for some reason avoid having their camera on. And I'm not certain that it's bandwidth purposes.
Right, makes sense. Is there a lesson planning?
For online teaching, you mean?
I guess, yes, I guess. For Connect. Is there a lesson planning?
Oh, lesson plan on Connect. There is the, Nasir can help me, there is the teacher's manual that has instructions.
Yes, there are support resources available for instructors. However, I'm not sure the person who's asking, is he from school? Because lesson planning is usually more important at schools levels. So we have a different platform for that, and we do have lesson planning tools built into that for that purpose.
That's all.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm just gonna continue. These are the resources that I use. I'm sure we're going to be sharing the recording, so you can get them from there. The emergency remote instruction, and then thinking about pedagogy in an unfolding pandemic. That's my contact information. Of course, you can contact the representatives and Afshana from the main office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgios.
Thank you, Georgios. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for everyone who's tuned in. I know we didn't get around to answering everyone's questions, but we will be saving the chat box and the Q&A text and get back to you all individually. Do stay connected. Join us on our LinkedIn pages, Twitter and Facebook. And if you do have any questions that you didn't get to ask in the actual chat box, do drop me an email, and then I can also forward you on to the relevant reps for your region as well. Thank you.